Today, we're going to talk a little bit about if we should be worried about OpenAI and the drama sort of happening over the last couple of weeks. As an AI developer, I'm kind of looking at this through that lens, through the lens of, is this a partner that I can really rely on? Or are there sort of troubling things happening that I need to be really worried about kind of going forward with my solutions? So over the last week, OpenAI fired their CEO, Sam Altman, and he has kind of since been restored, but yet there's some things sort of still in the works of kind of recovering through that. Throughout that time, CEO of Microsoft backed up Sam Altman and the team at OpenAI, kind of saying that, hey, if like OpenAI is really going through these challenges, he'd be willing to support them. Other companies also sort of looked at scooping up some of that talent as well, because there was just so many people that were upset about the situation with Sam and the kind of confusion around what had happened there. So like really over the course of this entire time, there's just been so many questions about OpenAI, about the situation. Microsoft's certainly wondering about like their investment, whether it's a sound strategy to put so much of their effort into a company that may have governance issues such as this. But as somebody who's like less interested in the business aspects, but more interested in, of course, like the AI, APIs, and the tooling available, how does this change how we think about using OpenAI? So really, in my mind, nothing really changes. OpenAI still has the best training data in the industry. Their data is fantastic. They've, of course, been kind of working on their model to make sure that it can understand more facts, be able to have more working memory. And when you sort of test that against some of the other industry tools like Claude, we really see that GPT performs like significantly better. And this is really because of the training that they've been doing with their AI. So another question that sort of comes to mind when you start thinking about this is like, are we locked into their tooling? Are we locked into like their way of doing things? And the answer for me is like really no. When I look at how their model kind of stacks up against other open source models, I find that OpenAI has a very generally good model that works very well for a lot of different problems. But when you actually start fine tuning and getting into the specifics, you may find that there are actually other models that perform better. This is a benchmark that I ran OpenAI against two other open source models. And OpenAI, while performing very well across the board, kind of comes in second to one of these open source models. And really that kind of shows how much flexibility there is in the solutions, right? We aren't locked into OpenAI's tooling really when we look at our solutions. As long as we've got good testing environments, we don't really have to worry about lock-in because we can really test to see if OpenAI is the best solution or not. If it's not, it's pretty easy for us to change the model that we rely on. We can just change the endpoint we point at. And that kind of hints at like the biggest impact of everything here, which is like the platforms that you actually use these AI tools on. AWS released Amazon Bedrock. Bedrock is effectively these kind of cloud-hosted models. You can just hit an endpoint and call one of these AIs. And that's very similar to like the OpenAI API, but it's scaled across AWS's infrastructure, right? Microsoft is following suit on this. They're doing their models as a service solution that does something very similar to what AWS has set up with Bedrock. This ability to sort of like use any model, open source or otherwise, and be able to switch against a kind of commonly known API interface really enables teams to use whatever model they see fit without having to worry about the setup time of infrastructure and the building of that platform. Really, as an AI developer, we want to conveniently switch models as needed. We don't want to be stuck with anything. We want to use the right tool for the right job. And we want to do what we can as we go. The only real strong case of lock-in that I can see is when we think about fine tuning. When we take an existing model and we add additional data to sort of train that model in a way that lines up with the goals of our app. That means that we're taking a model and we're changing it and we're investing in it. And when we make that kind of investment, it's actually really hard to roll that back or switch that to another model. That other model may not perform as well. We may need to train multiple other models to sort of evaluate that training space. It gets a lot more expensive. And while like prices overall have gone down for how we fine tune models, there's still a lot that kind of gets locked in. I'd avoid this area generally. There's a lot of other solutions that you can use for AI applications. They don't require fine tuning. You can use RAG. You can use a lot of other ways to sort of augment the generation that happens using an AI model you don't need fine tuning, even though that's what everyone talks about. Overall, I'd say that the drama at OpenAI doesn't really change that much for developers. We're always just looking for the best solutions that work, and we're going to continue to look for that wherever they are. They could be at OpenAI, or they could be elsewhere. Thanks for tuning into this discussion today. If you're more interested in other ideas and other topics around AI, consider looking at our blog, stablediscussion.com. We also have a podcast, and we'll be posting sometime next week discussing more about AI and the future of AI. Thanks so much.